Hello, today we are going to be starting our analysis of the Players Cup Regional Qualifiers, the first week that happened a couple weeks ago, and we're going to be trying to catch all the way up to where the finals are, and we're going to be trying to analyze those the day after they come out. So we're looking at each one of the matches, and first one that was up was Phil Nguyen and James Mainey, I believe in the Oceania winners round 2 bracket. So let's go ahead and get into that. All right, so Phil Nguyen, James Mainey, and so first off we see James sending out Ndidi and Hatterene, that strong size spam expanding force core, and we get Weavile and Wheezing here out of Phil. Wheezing's neutralizing gas will prevent the psychic terrain from going up from Ndidi, which is huge. But we do see Hatterene actually has Sludge Bomb from James. That's going to be pretty important here. Going into Wheezing, super effective. We do see Phil looks like Dynamaxing the Wheezing. Sludge Bomb is going into the Hatterene. My apologies. Dynamaxing the Weavile. Dynamaxing Weavile. Extremely fast Pokemon is going to be able to do a ton of damage, especially with a dark type up against these two psychic types. Hatterene is fairy as well, providing a little bit of resistance there, but Weavile has a great attack stat, and seeing a Dynamax Weavile is, it's unorthodox to say the least. We see here Hatterene G-maxing without a psychic terrain up. We can imagine that it will be trying to use max psychic to be getting the terrain to happen. Ndidi's Follow Me coming out here. Good solid redirection, keeping Hatterene alive, almost guaranteeing that psychic terrain is set up. We see Ndidi goes down here. No Focus Sash. Now both of these players know each other's items, which is pretty big. And we see that special defense drop there, but we can imagine that Hatterene very likely has the Focus Sash since Ndidi does not. And here comes the Max Mind Storm. Big damage into Wheezing, actually knocking it out without even needing a terrain boost. But now we get the terrain set up. Unfortunately, Ndidi is no longer there to take advantage of it. If Hatterene survives long enough after its Dynamax, we could see some expanding force clicks. But that neutralizing gas wears off. Weavile's pressure is now into effect. Arcanine comes out here. The Intimidate not doing too much against Hatterene, but it can certainly use moves like Snarl to lower the special attack. Will-O-Wisp is a great tool. The burn is going to be useful no matter what. But Porygon 2 comes out now, its download stat will raise up its attack. Not too important now. Porygon 2 tends to be a special attacker, but now we see Phil has to make some decisions here. Max Hailstorm getting set up wouldn't be the worst thing. Weavile doesn't take damage from it, but Arcanine does, as does Hatterene and Porygon. I missed that one. Let's go back a little bit. All right, so we do see Max Darkness into Porygon 2. Understandable that will get another special defense drop. That's not exactly Weavile's strong suit, but it could impact something a little bit later in the game. We see both moves going into Porygon 2, but Porygon 2 uses Ally Switch. This Max Darkness is still going to do a ton of damage to Hatterene. It's almost going to look like this was a call, but this Hatterene is almost guaranteed going down. It hangs on with a sliver of health left. That special defense drop, again, not too important right now, although Arcanine Snarl, if it does need to use that, could be important. Burn Up comes out here. Hatterene goes down. Only one good turn of Dynamax out of that, but Porygon 2 is healthy, completely healthy. Arcanine no longer fire type. Maybe not too important here unless we see a water or ground type come out. Well, there we go. Azumarill coming in. That burn up is actually pretty key. Now Arcanine is going to be able to survive a couple big hits from a Liquidation or an Aqua Jet a bit better than it would normally. Alright. So Burn Up now no longer has a stab boost, and we see Will-O-Wisp now targeting the Azumarill. This is where that comes in. And we see Max Darkness coming out once again, targeting that Porygon, doing a decent amount of damage. But as we can see, these special defense drops aren't really having too much of an effect with two fairly physical attackers on the field. Oh, Azumarill dodges the Will-O-Wisp. That's going to be big. Play Rough almost knocks out the Weevil. Weevil is not the bulkiest, so that most certainly could have killed. Porygon 2, Trick Room goes up. This is going to be dangerous. Weevil is certainly faster than both these Pokemon, and as we saw, Arcanine is indeed faster. But Phil brought the Porygon 2 of his own, which could be huge. A Thunderbolt into Azumarill is going to be dangerous. And if Phil has more Pokemon going into a Porygon 2 and either Arcanine or Weezing 1v1 against another Porygon 2, or I'm sorry, Arcanine or Weevil 1v1 into another Porygon 2, I think I would rather be on the side that doesn't have the 3 special defense drops. Now, out of James here, we could certainly see an Aqua Jet into the Weavile slot, but we do see the switch into Porygon 2. Download goes, and it looks like, yes, special attack. So now we have multiple special defense drops on James' side and a special attack boost from Porygon. The Steel Roller does get the Psychic Terrain out of there. Tri-Attack comes out. That might have been a setup to try to get Aqua Jet into the Weavile slot. Arcanine gets frozen. That could be huge. Arcanine does not get the chance to thaw out. Alright, let's see what happens. Oh, Phil's Porygon doesn't have Thunderbolt, but the special attack boost might be just enough. We can imagine that this Azumarill is Assault Vest. We see Porygon 2 opting for recovery here, and we see another Will-O-Wisp attempted to come out of a frozen Arcanine. Right now, James seems like he's in a pretty favorable spot. Psychic Terrain is out of there. An Aqua Jet from Azumarill is probably going to take out, well, it's definitely going to take out Weevil, and it's probably going to be doing plenty of damage to Weezing. A Play Rough on this Arcanine puts it down to 10. Now all of Phil's, or I'm sorry, Weezing is KO'd. All of Phil's Pokemon are going to be well within range of. Oh, and Arcanine goes down on a crit. That may or may not have mattered, but that freeze certainly did. Porygon 2 uses Recover. Now it's a Weevil versus a Porygon 2 and an Azumarill. And, well, this Phil's Porygon 2 without Thunderbolt is going to have a tough time breaking through this almost certainly Assault-vested Azumarill. Weevil comes out on 10 hit points. Trick Room is still up. We could see an Ice Shard here out of Weevil as a priority attack, but if Azumarill has Aqua Jet, that's just going to be it. We do see Fake Out, though. These priority moves... a priority move from Weavile is now going to be able to be used without the Psychic Terrain, which is definitely important. But that freeze was big. Fake Out coming out will likely flinch this Porygon 2. Azumarill's Aqua Jet, as we said, taking out the Weevil, no problem. And now, instead of a potential 2v1 in Phil's favor, it's the opposite. But once again, Porygon 2 special defense is so much lower on James's side. It's extremely close here. If Phil can get rid of this Porygon 2, there's a chance that he could come back here against this Azumarill. However, currently I imagine these Porygon 2s are speed tying. Azumarill uses Liquidation. It's apparently slower than both of them. And James' Porygon 2 beats out Phil's. It seems like James's Porygon 2 might be faster under Trick Room. Phil's Porygon 2 comes out again. I can't imagine that it's going to kill. It does with a crit! That might just be what Phil needed to come back here, but this Azumarill is powerful. It is plenty strong. But now Phil's Porygon 2 is faster after what we saw before, but Azumarill still has Aqua Jet. Try it. It's just going to come down to whether or not Azumarill's Aqua Jets are going to be enough versus... Oh, Azumarill opts not to go for the Aqua Jet, likely going for either a Play Rough or a Liquidation. Liquidation comes out. I don't know if this is going to be enough. With Porygon 2's recover... Oh, the lower defense might be important here. If James gets another defense drop on that Porygon 2, just one Liquidation or one Play Rough might do it. Here we see that Liquidation coming out again. It's going to be doing a solid chunk. It doesn't quite 2-hit KO, and there's no second defense drop. Porygon 2 just trying to get as much health as it possibly can before it really tries to start taking more chunks out of this Azumarill. Right now, it's going to be hard for James to win without another defense drop on Liquidation. If he does get it, though, that's going to be huge. Once again, no defense drop. Perfect time for Phil to use Tri Attack here. It won't outright KO, but Porygon 2 might just live an Aqua Jet, but that's going to be dangerous. If this is a crit here, that could do it, or a high roll. Azumarill stays alive just barely. This Liquidation comes out. Is Porygon 2 in Aqua Jet range? That's the question. Phil has to recover here, otherwise Porygon 2 is almost certainly going to die to 2 Aqua Jets. Aqua Jet comes out. This is going to be a close one with the defense drop. That defense drop was huge on that first Liquidation. Game 1 goes to James Mainey after a relatively... Game 1 goes to James Mainey after a bit of a rough start. Indeedee going down. The Psychic Terrain did get set up, which was pretty key, but both Indeedee and Hatterene went down early. Phil looked like he was in a they were in a fantastic place to keep moving forward. But now, as we're going into Game 2, let's see if we see any adjustments out of Phil trying to really, like we saw that Weevil, which is phenomenal against these Psychic spam, as well as Weezing with Neutralizing Gas. So we'll see if James makes any adjustments. It seemed like everything played out phenomenally for them. And I can imagine most certain, like their Porygon 2 was phenomenal here. Alright, so with that, let us get into Game 2. Alright, as we said, James sending out the exact same front 2. Let's see what happens with Phil. I imagine we're still going to see Weezing here. Making sure that that Psychic Turn doesn't get set up is going to be important. But instead we see Arcanine and Porygon 2 here. Arcanine's Intimidate once again, not really doing too much against 2 very strong special attackers. And Psychic Terrain is getting set up now. Expanding Force clicks are going to start happening most certainly. Maybe we'll see a Follow Me out of Indeedee, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. And right now, Hatterene is the slowest Pokemon on the field. Porygon 2 does not want to set up Trick Room for Phil. And Porygon 2 gets an attack raise. That's not the most ideal. But here we go. We see a Snarl will lower some special attacks. That will help, but Expanding Force is still such a powerful move. The Porygon 2 with Shadow Ball is a pretty good tech against these Psychic Spam teams. It seems like that's kind of what Phil was really aiming to target. Weezing's Neutralizing Gas kind of just shafts terrain abilities, which can be super helpful as we saw in that first game, but it doesn't stop the max move effects like Max Mindstorm. So we see here the Porygon 2 Shadow Ball might be a little bit of a concession to these size spam strategies, but the lack of Thunderbolt, as we saw, definitely opened Phil up to a weakness to strong water type moves. As we saw there, Azumarill kind of, had its way with Phil's team. Snarl comes out. Good damage on both of James's Pokemon. A critical hit on the Indeedee. Special attack drops are going to be important. We'll see if it matters too much. We don't see a Dynamax out of James this time. Understandable, since Expanding Force might just be stronger than any of the max moves right now, hitting both Pokemon for massive damage. But it doesn't do too much from Indeedee. Maybe not the most special attacked invested. Tri Attack comes out, doing a good chunk, putting Indeedee just below half. But now James uses Trick Room here. As we saw, Hatterene can set up its own Trick Room, and Hatterene is now the slowest on the field, which means it's going to be moving first. Hatterene Expanding Force potentially, as we said, Hatterene potentially has Focus Sash, and that might already be broken. So Incineroar going with a Snarl again, trying to lower those special attacks as much as possible. A Expanding Force here out of both Indeedee and Hatterene might not kill Arcanine, but Hatterene's special attack is just much stronger than Indeedee. So we'll see what happens. Instead we see Arcanine max guarding with the max move. And Porygon, considering clicking Shadow Ball again, it didn't do too much damage to Indeedee before. It might be able to do a little bit more to Hatterene if it's not invested in a lot of bulk. Alright, we see a Max Fire into Indeedee actually, and Phil's going to be trying to reverse the Trick Room here. Could be important, could be big. See that Dynamax coming out. We'll see if we most likely are not going to be getting a Dynamax out of James unless there's some weird speed swaps that happened. And we might just see 2 Expanding Force clicks, and once again, that is big damage in Psychic Terrain. So, and there's a couple things James can do here. James can kind of see what Arcanine is doing. It wouldn't be a bad idea to switch out Indeedee, but we see, as we said, Expanding Force is coming out of both Pokemon, doing a good chunk of damage, but not taking any KOs. That's going to be dangerous. Arcanine Max Flare is going to be setting up Sun here. May or may not be important for later moves. Potentially another Max Flare out of Arcanine will be supercharged, could be doing a ton of damage to any other Pokemon. We see that Indeedee goes down, and James is going to have to be thinking about what they want to bring. Porygon 2 reverses Trick Room. Hatterene is now a sitting duck, unless perhaps there is a Tailwind user from James, but seeing both Tailwind and Trick Room on the same floor would be interesting. James sends out Porygon 2 of his own. Double Trick Room setters. Definitely wants to guarantee Trick Room goes up. This time it's James's Porygon's turn to have a special attack boost. Could be important. We don't know every move that it has. We can kind of infer that it has Recover. We know Trick Room. We know Tri Attack. It might have Shadow Ball, or it might have Thunderbolt or Ice Beam. All options that are understandable. We see Phil. Again, Max Quaking is an option, raising the special defense. But as we said, that Max Flare going into Hatterene, especially boosted Sun, might just take a knockout. It will do a ton of damage, even through Protect. Alright, so we see the Max Flare here. No switches from James' part, not even considering trying to maintain that Hatterene. And it doesn't quite KO, even in Sun. And we see Phil's Porygon 2 using Recover. Hatterene is going to be doing a good chunk of damage, but after that Snarl, it's still likely not going to be enough to KO Arcanine, especially with the Dynamax. Expanding Force comes out here. Arcanine is still alive. Porygon 2 does take some damage. We see this Berry coming out of Arcanine, healing up just a little bit, up to 101. We'll see what this Porygon 2 does from James. We see that Trick Room again. Now Hatterene will be moving first. Expanding Force could very well take out this Arcanine, even in Dynamax. A Max Guard here might be useful. I don't know if this Max Quake is going to be able to go off. We don't have an ally switch on Phil's Porygon 2, which would give a 50-50 shot that James isn't predicting it. But this reverse Trick Room comes out again, but if Arcanine is down, it's not going to matter too much. Now, Phil does still have 3 Pokemon in the back. Arcanine goes down to 1 hit point. It does 100 total. Tri-Attack does come out. James's Porygon is once again faster under Trick Room. It might be a speed tie, but James's Porygon seems to be a little bit slower than Phil's. I wonder what those investments are. Phil's Porygon 2 uses Trick Room again. It will be moving first on the next turn of the Pokemon on the battlefield. We could very well see, we see Weezing come in now, and we do see that Rotom Fan in the back. Usually Rotom Fan with weakness policy, you would think, especially with Weavile here potentially using its priority Ice Shard to proc it. But it's not going to be Dynamaxing now, and we're going to have to see what Weezing wants to do here. It does have Taunt, but against a double Trick Room setters, it's a little dicey. Now Phil could try to call it and have Porygon 2 use Trick Room again, but if James uses Trick Room on his own Porygon 2 or his own Hatterene, that's going to cause some issues. Tri-Attack comes out, will likely do plenty of damage to Hatterene here. But if James and Phil's Porygon 2s are actually speed tying, and James has just won the speed tie favorably every time, that Trick Room could still go up. Depends on how fast Weezing is. Now, Phil is kind of covering that option. A taunt on Porygon 2 does prevent it from setting up Trick Room, but we see a Tri Attack from Phil's Porygon 2 going into James, and here we see that ally switch. Now, here's the thing. Phil did cover for that. These players do know the other moves. Taunt goes into Hatterene, but that Hatterene is very likely going down to this Tri Attack. We'll have to see what happens. Porygon 2 didn't get a special attack boost. Hatterene isn't exactly the bulkiest Pokemon, and there it goes. It goes down. All right. So now we'll have to see what James's last Pokemon is. Phil still has Rotom Fan in the back. It does do a good chunk of damage. We'll have to see what James brings here. We imagine that Phil feels like they're in a pretty good position. Rotom and Weezing are both pretty strong here. And here we see the Azumarill coming out. Now, this time we have Rotom Fan in the back. We can imagine that it has something along the lines of Thunderbolt, Discharge, Thunder, any one of those moves, which is going to be fantastic at dealing with the Azumarill, once again, even despite the Assault Vest. As we said here, Phil's Pokemon going to be able to be nice and healthy in this round. It's an effective 3v2 here, and Trick Room, like, James still seems like he wants to be setting up Trick Room here. Very much a hard Trick Room mode of a team with both Azumarill and Hatterene. Phil can kind of go in between those options. Doesn't necessarily need to be slow, and this Porygon 2 does counter Trick Room, like these Trick Room modes, very well with Shadow Ball and basically a Trick Room of its own, which is what it kind of seems to be doing here. Now we see James finally Dynamaxing, and we see the Azumarill Dynamax, which makes plenty of sense. We don't normally see a Porygon 2 Dynamaxing every day of the week. So this Azumarill could be setting up its own rain, could be trying to raise special defense if it happens to have, could be trying to raise its defense, but that's not going to be doing too much as all of Phil's attackers are special. Taunt goes into the Porygon 2. No recovers, no ally switches, no Trick Rooms. Phil's Porygon 2 does get the recover off, though, and James's Porygon 2, whatever its attacking move is, it's Tri Attack. Well, we do know it's Tri Attack. That's all it's going to be able to click. We do see the Max Steel Spike coming out. Going into the Weezing is going to be doing a ton of damage, but it doesn't KO. Not even close. This Weezing is bulky despite it being super effective against it. As we saw, the defense does go up. It's not going to matter too much. All of Phil's remaining Pokemon are special attackers. Harsh Sunlight fades. Doesn't matter quite that much, although it does give a little bit better of a boost to James's Azumarill. And as we saw, that Porygon 2's Trick Room failed due to Taunt. Phil's Porygon 2 now can kind of start wrecking havoc here on James's. Having two Porygon 2s on the field is certainly interesting. Last time it happened, James was able to pull it out. And James does still have a very strong Dynamax Pokemon. But it might not be enough. We do know that Weezing is pretty much going to get taken out by the next Steel-type move from Azumarill. Alright, and we see Analytic finally proccing from after the Weezing switches out. We see Rotom Fan finally. Tri Attack comes out. We might be seeing another Steel Spike. It feels like that was a fairly obvious switch, and again, the defense raise isn't going to be that important. Tri Attack comes out again from James's Porygon 2, puts it pretty low. We see the Max Steel Spike. It's going to raise the defense. It's not going to be doing a ton of damage to this Rotom, I imagine. Yep, maybe about a third. And now Rotom Fan can kind of just start sweeping through here, cleaning up. These defense raises don't mean anything to the special attacking Rotom Fan. Now, it won't really get a chance to proc Weakness Policy, but it could go ahead and set up Nasty Plot here, which would, I mean, it's likely going to be faster than both of these other Pokemon. Trick Room is not going to be setting up. There is still one more turn of Taunt on James Porygon 2. As we can see here, its special attack is boosted, which could be dangerous for Rotom if it does try to set up with Nasty Plot. So we'll see what happens here with these attacks. But either of these Pokemon just being left is certainly dangerous. Weezing comes out now. One key thing here is that Weezing just might... Weezing's neutralizing gas does kind of neuter Azumarill a little bit. Its huge power doesn't get to actually boost its attack stat, which does weaken it considerably. Rotom's Nasty Plot comes out. It's all gonna depend on if this Rotom fan can survive an attack from Porygon 2 and from Azumarill. We do know that its special attack was buffed. This special attack from Porygon 2 takes out the Weezing. This next attack, whatever is coming out of Azumarill, is going into Rotom fan. Neutralizing gas wears off. Porygon 2 gets another download boost. This is dangerous. It's now at +3 attack. Azumarill Max Geyser coming out. This is going to be doing a good chunk of damage to this Rotom fan. That setup turn was completely wasted. A Thunderbolt might have done it, but all we see now is this Rotom fan going down, and once again, it's a Porygon 2 from Phil against a Porygon 2 and a Azumarill from James. And James' Porygon 2 has 3 special attack boosts. Porygon 2 comes out. Phil's going to give it the old college try here. Potentially a Recover will be able to put him in a decent spot, but now all of Azumarill's water attacks are rain boosted. Special attack boost is something, but this is going to be nigh impossible for Phil to come back and win because both of James' Pokemon have plenty of health. Azumarill hasn't even been touched. Once again, it's just the same thing as what happened last match. Phil looked like they were in a commanding position, but Weezing going down at an inopportune time and setting up with Rotom fan just didn't pan out this game. Phil's Porygon 2 uses Recover. Now this is the winner's bracket. Phil will still be in the tournament. Going down to the loser's bracket, James will continue forward. Most likely, it's not over till it's over, but this is going to be a big attack out of Porygon 2. It does almost half liquidation coming out. Might just take out the rest. Not quite 28 hit points left on Phil's Porygon 2, but no Recover is going to be able to heal up enough damage to keep that Porygon 2 alive. And here we see Phil giving the concession. Wow. So we saw Phil playing around the size spam pretty well. The Snarl from the Arcanine really helped the survival of Phil's Pokemon against both an Indeedee and a Hatterene. That was a huge move there. And we saw that Arcanine was able to take out both Indeedee and Hatterene, leaving James with just Azumarill and Porygon 2, which wasn't really which you would think would probably struggle a little bit against what eventually was left between Porygon 2, Weezing, or Galarian Weezing, my apologies, Galarian Weezing and Rotom fan, but Phil probably swapped out that Weezing a couple too many times, and it let Porygon 2 get a massive special attack boost with its download ability, and Rotom fan using Nasty Plot just left it open for Azumarill to take it out. But that was a phenomenal match. Both players played extremely well, and we kind of saw Phil's respect for size spam. It definitely, you can see Porygon 2 uses Shadow Ball. It does have Trick Room itself, which it seems less like Phil's team is built around Trick Room. And Porygon 2 is more of his own Trick Room counter, along with the size spam counter. So that is certainly interesting to see. And again, we saw Arcanine with Snarl, so that's going to be something to keep an eye out as we go through the rest of these games. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Tomorrow we'll be looking at the second match that was streamed in the Players Cup Regional Qualifiers. Thank you so much for watching. Be safe, be smart, make wise decisions. Thank you.